Good evening. My name is Steve Worthington. I'm the mayor of the City of University Place, and I'm calling the May 15th meeting of the University Place City Council to order. And if we could start with the roll call.
Mayor, Councilmember Keel,
Councilman Keel present.
Councilmember Wood,
Present.
Councilmember McCluskey. Here. Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming here.
Councilmember Belisi,
Councilmember Belisi here.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa,
Present.
and Mayor Bird.
And Mayor Worthington present.
Mayor, you have
Great, thank you. And I would invite Councilmember Belisi to lead us on the Pledge of
Can we
Allegiance.
please stand?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Belisi.
Thank you.
And I would invite a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa makes a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Councilmember Belisi, I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any objections to the approval of the agenda as distributed? And seeing none, the agenda is approved as distributed. Thank you. And then that brings us to our presentations for this evening. And let's see if you'd, Lisa's going to start us off with that.
Great, thank you so much, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Lisa Torek, Administrative Services Department. So I wanted to provide a brief overview of the Day Island Preparedness Series that was held in April. There were two meetings that were held actually on Day Island at their clubhouse. And this is in relation to the outcomes of the king tides that were experienced last year. So if you remember, in December of 2022, around December 26th and December 27th, the Puget Sound area experienced some highly unusual weather patterns for us during that time. There was a mix of extremely low pressure sitting over the region, and there was an atmospheric river sort of hanging out over the Puget Sound. And there were some winds and storms mixed in. And so that caused king tides. And those king tides and the water level around that time were some of the highest that this region has seen and broke quite a few records during that time. And so you can see from the photo, this was after the first king tide event. This is the photo of Day Island looking south towards the South Spit, and you can see that a number of homes in that area were flooded during that time. There was some concern that another king tide event was going to be experienced in January. So it was at that time that West Pierce, the West Pierce Emergency Coalition, which is the City of University Place, the City of Lakewood, the Town of Steilacoom, and West Pierce Fire, got together and with the assistance from CERT volunteers organized a sandbagging event, also went down and with the cooperation from the state, the feds, and the county, conducted some damage assessments after the flooding events. And it was during that time that it was recognized that a course needed to be put together for personal preparedness for residents at Day Island that had experienced the flooding, along with residents at Sunset Beach. So in April, there were two meetings that were held. The first meeting was attended by 40 individuals from both communities of Sunset Beach and Day Island. And the second meeting was attended by 12 residents. So these were the topics of discussion that were covered. At the first meeting, we invited Scott Van Huff, who's the Region 10 Flood Insurance Liaison, to come and talk about flood insurance and the FEMA flood program to residents. We also had city staff in attendance. So Rob Brunk, the assistant building official, and Kevin Brisky, the director of economic and community development, were present to speak to those residents that had specific concerns and questions regarding the city's permitting process in relation to some renovations that were required of their homes. West Pierce Fire attended. Rachel Adler, who's the Emergency Preparedness Coordinator, was the one who presented the Personal Preparedness Series. And we also had other city staff, our city manager, Steve Sugg, Public Safety Administrator, Jennifer Hales, and of course, Mayor Steve Worthington and Councilmember Denise McCluskey were all in attendance. We're there to answer any additional questions that the residents had. So at the first meeting, Scott Van Huff covered all things related to FEMA and the flood insurance, and you have those materials in your packet. Very detailed presentation. He discussed a wide variety of topics, discussed the various resources that are available for folks who experience flooding, talked about the different resources available, such as disaster aid and grants, loans in certain circumstances, and then, of course, the bulk of the material was talking about encouraging folks who hadn't already had flood insurance to strongly consider purchasing that flood insurance. So you have all of those materials in your packet, and if you have any more specific questions, we would certainly like to get those answered for you. But very, very detailed. Scott did stay after the first meeting and was able to answer questions from individual meetings who approached him afterwards. So we were very happy that he was able to come and present that evening, and we thank him for his time. We also had our two staff members that I had mentioned, Kevin Brisky and Rob Brunk there, and they provided some materials in terms of construction requirements and permitting requirements, because there were quite a few specific questions related to that as well. All of those materials were placed in your packet. There was one theme that arose out of that first meeting that involved some questions about raising homes. So just wanted to raise that to your awareness. There were some individuals that were wondering if their homes could be raised. Currently, homes on the south spit of Day Island, their height requirements are limited to 30 feet. The residential areas in the rest of the city is limited to 35 feet. So if there was further interest moving forward with that, it would go through the regular planning commission process and be addressed there. But I wanted to raise it to your awareness since there were many questions that came up that night on that topic. And the bulk of the presentation matter really focused on personal preparedness. There was a lot of time focused on the various levels of government and what each level of government provides in terms of service. So, of course, the federal government can provide pre-mitigation funding options, which we discussed that evening. They also can come in and provide disaster relief after a period of time. And then it goes on from there with state relief and state support. And then, of course, there's always local support with emergency management. But really, preparedness starts at the individual level and starts with the residents themselves. And so that was the focus of the second evening. And so when Rachel presented, she really provided a lot of information on how to get the appropriate information during a disaster. So residents were encouraged to sign up for Code Red. That's the city's sort of reverse 911 system. So if anyone hasn't yet signed up, we highly encourage them to do so. There's also PC Alert, which is the county's version of Code Red. We always promote both of those so that regardless of where you're at in the county, you're still getting a lot of the same information during an emergency, on top of all of your other normal places that we go. So for hopefully everyone has a NOAA All Hazards radio at their home, and that's part of their personal preparedness kit, in addition to all of the regular news stations. But a lot of folks are also getting their information from social media. So you'll see a lot of posts about disaster and communications on Twitter, Facebook, those areas as well. So it's not just the regular news stations that we think of anymore. In addition to that, there's some other apps that we like to make folks aware of. One of those is Shake Alert, since we're in earthquake country. It's a app that you can download on your phone, and it is in conjunction with a couple of universities along the West Coast that can provide a couple minutes to seconds of an alert before an earthquake heads your way. So those couple of seconds can, save a life. It can give you enough alert time to get to, a sturdy table or get outdoors. So we encourage folks to do that. So Rachel spent a lot of time talking about that and making sure that people realized on their phones they can turn on those emergency notifications. So sometimes folks turn them off because of Amber Alert, but it's a good reminder to keep those on. They also discussed making a plan. How are you going to get in touch with your family members, depending on if an earthquake happens at night when you're at home or if you're at work. She talked about building a kit and what's necessary in those. So some things that we tend to forget about are medications and getting a lot of those in advance if you can, and having some extra pieces of medication available to you or those that depend on you, and taking care of your pets, right? Making sure that those furry friends have food and water and the medications that they may need. And then the discussion went and talked about getting involved in the community, and that's where a couple of different programs come in, like CERT. So you all are probably familiar with the Community Emergency Response Team, and individuals can go to locations like West Pierce Fire. It's a grant-funded program, and West Pierce Fire does a really good job about providing a preparedness course. It's 7 classes. It culminates at the end of a drill. And it's really serious. Like, people get dressed up like they have wounds, they're in different buildings, and you take these various courses about disaster preparedness. You take disaster medical training. So it's a little bit more in-depth than your regular just first aid and CPR training. And there's also a disaster psychology course that they have folks go through. And so we always encourage folks to participate in that. So that was promoted at the Day Island Preparedness Series as well. And then we were just available for any questions that individuals had for both of those evenings. There were a lot of materials that were provided by Jennifer Hales. She brought in tons of brochures. West Pierce Fire brought on huge FEMA booklets, which are like 100 pages long, on how to prepare if you want to really get into the weeds. But some of the handier ones are the small, how to prepare in a year brochures. So a lot of those were given out as well. And I have some really exciting news that Day Island is working on that soon. So all of that information was covered. Some items that came out of this training is there was going to be a third course on Day Island. But after the second meeting and more discussion amongst staff, we thought it might be better to move that third course into September and really get folks prepared for the storm season. Folks are going to be back in school. They're back from vacation. It's a good time to remind folks about how to be prepared. So we do want to cover a storm preparedness course on Day Island. In addition to that, we do want to have them strongly consider, and we will be inviting Pierce County out to do a presentation on PCNet. They're currently in the process of updating their program. It's sort of like CERT on steroids. It's very neighborhood focused. So they will go out to a neighborhood. They'll do a lot of the same types of training. So they'll cover disaster preparedness, they'll cover personal preparedness, but they take it a step further. And they walk neighbors through getting to know one another, understanding the skill sets of the folks that live in that particular neighborhood. They identify tools that homeowners may have that would be valuable for use in an emergency. And they do a walk around of the neighborhood. They identify hazards, identify gathering places, start phone trees, get the communication going. So it's a really fabulous program. And with the population on Day Island and Sunset Beach, we feel that these would be really prime candidates to go through a PCNet program. You have very active residents on Day Island that have very interesting backgrounds, very sophisticated skill sets, and really, in cases of a major disaster, to have a neighborhood prepared where they're 2 weeks ready at the minimum to take care of one another will really help in the long run, because there's only so many public safety personnel. And in the case of a major disaster, it's really going to be up to individual families, neighborhoods, and communities to look out for one another until help can arrive. So we'd like for that presentation to be a part of the September course that's held down on Day Island. And additionally, some other items that came out of these preparedness series was we recognized, based on some of the discussion that occurred at the first night's meeting, we really wanted to update our hazard mitigation plan. So we're going to be looking to do that this spring and this summer to provide for some other projects, like the potential for raising homes, the potential for a secondary escape route, some other types of things that folks had voiced some interest in. So as long as we update our hazard mitigation plan and some of those projects are in there, we will always be grant ready. Because in the fall, a lot of various FEMA grants come out that we may want to apply for funding for various projects. And in addition to that, the hazard mitigation is supposed to be a living document, so it's always good for us to kind of review it, go through it, make updates, and once we make those updates and present it to council and have your review, should you approve that, then we will forward that along to the council and they'll amend our plan I misspoke. We'll forward that along to the county, and they'll amend our appendix as part of the Pierce County plan. Another positive thing that came out of the king tides, even though there was physical damage that were experienced by homeowners and there was property lost, we did really improve the communication between the communities, the city, and the county. So Jennifer and West Pierce Fire were able to get in touch with folks who run the Sunset alert communication system for their neighborhood, and also the Day Island Neighborhood News. And so now that we have their contact information, we've been sending them information on various updates that have been going on, various alerts that we've been made aware of, so that they can then communicate that out to their communities. And in addition to that, it's been beneficial making those connections, because if they have any recommendations that they would like to see the city to do, they're more able to pass that along. We have all the contact information. They know who to contact at the city, so that was beneficial. The king tides also strengthened the communication relationship between the county and West Pierce Emergency Management Coalition. So after the December king tides happened, all of the PIOs were able to get together and create consistent messaging so that regardless of where the message was originating from, someone on Day Island could get the message from West Pierce Emergency Coalition, or they could get it from the county, and it would be the same type of messaging. So there was no confusion in what messaging we were trying to get out and what information we wanted people to have. So that was another positive aspect as well. So that's a very brief overview of what was experienced for those 2 meetings in April and the next steps that we hope to continue as we work through some of their concerns on Day Island. And I'm sure Councilmember McCluskey and Mayor Worthington, they were present, so if you have anything else to add, we'd love to hear that, and we're available to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you.
Very good. Lisa, thank you. I appreciate the report and hitting some of the high points. I did have an opportunity to participate in several of those activities from the assessment on through, and it was a good chance to see our team in action and also to see our community interact. All in all, I thought it went well, but in any of these situations, it's important to do an after action and identify, where we can nonetheless strengthen our responses and such. So that's been the case, and I think we've heard some of those after action items now today. I wanted to invite Councilmember McCluskey, if you have any comments from your firsthand there. Otherwise, I had and I don't have a screen available to me to see Councilmember McCluskey, so if someone else can indicate if she's
there.
She's good? Okay.
She's there.
All right.
Okay. I would like to ditto what the staff report was, and Mayor Worthington indicated is the after action report, but also some of the preventative actionable items would be essential and important to also engage the whole community, because there are at-risk residents that the residents could be first responders for, that we could help them before the aid can arrive, because in some cases, with the depth of the flooding, we have to know how to handle it and survive. And in many cases, we at least have about 24 hours prior to understanding that it is going to be a substantial king tide coming in, especially with the barometric pressure. The other part to it is how to ensure that the homes and the culture of Day Island remain in future years. What's the sustainability, I think, would be essential as well in the after action reports, not only how to protect, but how to sustain, and I'm sure that goes with the Sunset Beach residents as well. Conclude my comments. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Appreciate that. I wanted to also add, I have, in our work with our federal delegation and also our 29th District representatives and senator, we've kept them abreast of the king tide situation and of some of the challenges there and the damages and the homes that were affected. Not so much because we have a specific ask today, but we may in the future, and we wanted to plant that seed and have an opportunity for them to understand the trials the folks at Day Island and at Sunset Beach went through. You know, we had about a dozen homes inundated with water up to roughly about 12 inches in their main living first floor spaces. And that was very daunting and challenging for many of them. So we want to, in my view, do the things we can to both prepare and to help them get through this process. Now, they're well in that recovery phase now. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I did want to offer that. Any of the other council members? I think Councilmember Wood, you had something you wanted to offer.
Actually, I had some questions. So thank you, Mayor. Just some questions. Do we have flood map projections for actually our whole coastal area, not just Day Island specifically? I know universities or the government have done flood map projections for coastal areas, especially related to climate change, saying 20 or 30 years, if the temperature goes up 2 degrees, we're going to see water rise. Do we have any of that for UP?
We do, and I know that Rob Brunk, he is our floodplain manager, and so he has access to those maps and those forecasts, and those also are referenced in the hazard mitigation plan as well.
Okay.
So if you're interested in seeing those, we can definitely get those for you.
I am, especially the timeline for projections, because if there's something we need to do as a city that's going to take us 10 years to do, it'd be good to know. All right, second question. The road on Day Island, is that a private road or is that a city-owned road?
The road going into Day Island
So
and the
say,
road
let's say
those are
South Spit.
Public.
That's a public
roads.
road. Okay, so, I mean, you can see the picture, the road's underwater too. Is that something we're going to need to address as a city at some point? Or, and if so, probably when? What's it going to take? Because I know that road's built on a pile of rocks. So that strikes me as something we should probably take a look at. And then finally, the flood insurance, just a quick question. Is that strictly an individual requirement between the homeowner and the National Flood Insurance, or is there a city component to that at all?
The individual homeowner can purchase flood insurance through various insurance carriers. FEMA is not the only game in town, but they are a provider as well.
Okay, but there's no requirement for the city to be involved with that at this point?
No.
Excellent. Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Councilmember Fleming, then Councilmember Figueroa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lisa, thanks for a great presentation on this. I know a lot of folks have a high interest in how we prepare and how we support our citizens, especially down in the Day Island area. I've got two questions. One, since I've not always been a huge fan of FEMA because of their slow response, but you mentioned the term disaster relief. In terms of our planning as a city and support to our communities, what does that mean?
So there are certain funds that are available, and I'll speak to what happened with Day Island. There were some representatives from FEMA associated with the Small Business Association and also FEMA Region 10 that came down to see if any of the homes could qualify for federal funding. There were also members from the state that came and did damage assessments afterwards to see if any individuals could qualify for the state funding. And there's very stringent requirements. There's, you have to be within a certain percentage of HUD income levels and various other things. And given the population, there were very few homes that met those requirements. There were maybe 3. But in instances like that, there is some federal funding available for recovery so long as people can meet those requirements.
Are there any other resources? I mean, when I think about a disaster and, folks who've lost everything that they had, their life basically is in their homes, waiting forever and a day for the government to respond is not the answer. So as we plan and anticipate these, do we have opportunities to look at resources and have those in place? So, God forbid we have another event where there's significant damage to homes, be it the flood, be it the earthquake or whatever?
Right, so the state has been working on having a regular, consistent fund for a variety of emergencies that occur within the state. There is more leeway for individuals to have access to some of those funds, but they do, for the most part, mirror some of the federal requirements. I think the biggest thing that is important for individuals to do is make sure that all of their insurance policies are up to date, that they have the appropriate insurance, that they have prepared, as much as they can for a variety of disasters. Because you're right, the ability of federal funding to come in after an event takes quite a bit of time. And so we encourage folks after the flooding, document everything, take pictures of everything, keep receipts of quotes that you get for replacing even regular household items, right? Or, if you meet with contractors to get quotes of how much it costs to, reconstruct certain things. Those are all important reminders for people to keep track of and keep so that they can at least try to apply for federal funding if and when it becomes available.
Okay. And then my last question, you talked about hazard mitigation. The one thing that's always struck me about Day Island is there's one way on and one way off across the bridge. But again, in hazard mitigating for disaster, if, again, God forbid something happened to that bridge, in our planning, do we have a way to evacuate folks off the island safely?
Yeah, so we have talked about a couple of different things. One of them will probably be the use of boats, most likely because it's going to be the quickest route. And so we've had some conversations within the West Pierce Emergency Coalition about how, we would be evacuating the island there. In terms of mitigation measures, there has been some discussion, very preliminary at this point, about looking at a walkable secondary route. So we'll have to study that and look at that. Again, that idea was raised at the first Day Island preparedness meeting. So it's something that we thought, yeah, let's take a look at that and see what we could do there.
Unless we have boats dedicated, the likelihood of finding folks in the middle of a crisis when everyone is trying to mitigate their own circumstances is kind of unlikely.
Which is why we want to encourage the neighborhoods to really get involved with PCNet and have some of those pieces in place before an event happens.
I think it would be awesome for us to do that and just kind of lead versus follow
Yeah.
on that one.
I
So
agree.
thank you again, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly, Councilmember Fleming. It's a good opportunity for us to think about how we can build on this event and the things we've learned. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Pretoric, on the 250,000 residential building coverage, is that include any damage to the land itself, for example, if there or infrastructure like a septic system or anything else, or it's just the building, the house itself?
That is a good question. I don't want to give wrong information, so I would refer, and I'll actually ask Scott. I'll give him a call and ask him specifically, and I'll get an answer back to you and the rest of council on that.
And so if the building is going to cost $500,000, they only cover, that's the maximum they can get coverage for, I would assume, correct?
I believe so,
Okay.
but I'm not for sure, so.
Okay. And so Is there something else that they can augment the other, but if it's a loss of the building because of flooding, they wouldn't have, the only flood insurance to get that home back would be this insurance, so the rest is out of pocket?
Aside from, aside from any sort of federal or state
Right.
recovery funding,
That would be it.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure. The second part would be, when it says guaranteed availability in participating communities, what does that mean?
And what page are you referencing, Mayor Pro Tem?
Where it says, this one right here,
Oh, okay.
at the bottom.
So I believe that is referencing communities that are a part of the, and I wish Rob was here because he has the exact language, but you have to be a participant in the National Flood Plain System, and there's certain things that you have to do. You have to have certain plans in place. Development Services is much more keen on this. I'm not the subject matter expert in this, but there's certain things you have to have in your code and certain things that you have to have, and perhaps Mayor Worthington probably is aware of what those were based on previous history. But there's certain things that you do have to account for and provide in your code in order to state that, yes, you are a part of the National Floodplain Program, and therefore, you have access to certain things and certain funds and those sorts of items.
Is UP a participating community?
We are a participant, yes.
Okay. And my last clarification, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. The road going into the south pit is public?
My understanding are those are all public roads.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Anything else
Thank you.
before? All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Then, well, Lisa, thank you for the information, and it's great sharing that, and I appreciate everyone's efforts here. As someone who was in the meetings at the Day Island Clubhouse, good participation. Folks were certainly open to it. I know I learned from Scott's presentation on flood insurance quite a bit, more than I had before, and it I thought was very helpful. With that, I think we're going to move on to our public comment portion of the evening. And so, and Councilmember McCluskey, is there any, I really can't tell if your hand is up from where I'm at, so I'm just asking anything further for you? Okay, looks like we're good. All right, great, thank you. With that in mind, I will move us on to our public presentation phase. And for those of you at home, we have the information on how to make public comment via our computer system or via the telephone. Your screen has those details, and we'll be checking on that. We do have several people who have signed up for comment in our council room. We're going to start with those and then see if anyone else has added electronically, and also invite anyone else who hasn't signed up in the council room to make comment if they wish. But for those that have signed up, that would be Chris Saunders. And Ms. Saunders, if you'd like to come forward, you have 3 minutes. We'd certainly like to hear your comments.
Sure. Good evening, City Council. Whoops, your chair swivels. I'm actually here not to talk about the playground, but to talk about the coalition. On Wednesday this week at University Place Presbyterian Church, Chief Jim Sharp is going to come and speak to the coalition, and I'm just here to invite anyone to come. It'd be between 11:30 and 1 o'clock, and he's talking a little about a bunch of stuff with the fire department, of course, but specifically they're talking a little about how we can reduce non-emergency phone calls from going to 911. And it's good information to get out to everybody. And so I am just here to suggest that people might want to come and join us. That's it.
All right, then. So that's First Pres next Wednesday.
Not
which-
First Pres, University
UPPC.
Place Presbyterian
I'm
Church.
sorry.
UP Press.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it is this Wednesday.
this Wednesday. Thank you. All
from
right.
11:30 to 1
All
in the
right.
lower lounge.
Very good. Appreciate the clarification there. And then I'd also like to invite up Ms. Jackie Jones Hook for comments as well.
Good evening, City Council. I am Jackie Jones Hook, Executive Director with the Buffalo Soldiers Museum, and also trying to find the council meeting as our event planner, Carissa Bird. She may pop in at any time. But we're an American Military History Museum. Our mission is to educate, preserve, and present American history. We are a 501c3 located in Pierce County, and we were recently featured in the AAA magazine as one of the places to tour. And we certainly want to, I want to begin by thanking the University of Puget Sound. I know a number of you are retired military, and I would just like to recognize retired General Stan Fleming and others who are on the council. So as you know, JBLM is our highest employer, brings in the most revenue. So we're pleased to be hosting a Labor Day festival, a community building Labor Day festival. The theme is honoring our military labor force. It's going to be an exciting day. We're also pleased to say that the National Endowment for the Humanities is partnering with us, the Paul Allen Foundation, and has covered the cost for Cheney Stadium. So this will be a softball game. It's Army versus Air Force, but for historic purposes, we're saying the 25th Infantry Wreckers will be playing the Red Tail Hawks. The event is on Monday, September the 4th at Cheney Stadium. It will be free and open to the public. And so we invite you, the City Council, to join us in the list of supporters to cover the cost of activities for the day. And I'll just fill in a little bit. So we are planning for free back-to-school supplies, because as you know, schools have to purchase school supplies, free haircuts. There'll be bouncy houses and food trucks and a true festival. And I do have sponsorship letter and flyers for the council.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just a
Yes,
quick
please.
question. Jackie, what is the date of your event
September the 4th, which is a Monday. So, yeah, federal holiday.
and time?
It'll be from 10 till 5. The game is actually 1 to 3. But in Heidelberg Park, Mentor Parks is where there'll be all the activities, and the game will actually be at Cheney Stadium. And we're so glad to have them as a partner, because baseball is what they do.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the invitation and hearing about the event. So that's very good. Any other public comment? Anyone else in the room that would like to make a comment to the council at this point? And if not, then is there anyone online who's indicated they'd like to make comment? All right. Very good. Well, thank you. We'll move on with our agenda, and I'll close the public comment section this evening. And then we're on to our consent agenda. And I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor Pro Tem makes a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. And is there a second?
Councilmember Belisi, I second.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Belisi. We have a motion and a second. Are there any objections to the approval of the consent agenda as distributed? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. So, all right. Then we are set with that. We can move on to a report, starting with Mr. Sugg, our city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Two items. First, I wanted to comment on the public safety levy. At the April 25th special election, Proposition 1 to fund more police officers passed by more than 400 votes and has been certified by County Elections Office. This proposition will provide funding for 8 additional patrol and traffic officers, as well as a specialist to address homelessness, park safety, and crime prevention. This additional staff will enable our police department to have more than 2 patrol officers on duty for each shift, and it'll provide more officers to respond to calls for service. The police chief has a plan to implement this as soon as possible, and we will be discussing this with the council at the June retreat. Second item, I wanted to talk about our favorite event in June. First Saturday in June is the Duck Days Parade and Community Event. It starts at 10 a.m. The parade begins at 29th and Bridgeport, and then it concludes, turns down 37th, comes down Bridgeport, turns down 37th, and concludes at the fire station just over there on Drexler Drive. There is opportunity for groups to still register for the event, and we ask that they download the form off of the website, bring that or send it into City Hall, and we'll make sure that you get registered for the event. But we ask groups that want to participate to pre-register. Again, it kicks off at 10 a.m. at 29th and Bridgeport. In addition to scores of floats from community groups, school groups, and local businesses, this year's parade will also feature the 15-piece Clan Gordon Bagpipers. The parade will end at Village of Chambers Bay out here, where more fun awaits, including food trucks, music by country rocker Joel Gibson Jr., and scores of children's attractions, including stilt walkers, face painting games, and popular costume characters such as Elsa, Anna, Snow White, Spider-Man, and more. There'll be fun activities here in the library atrium, and also on site, a Pierce County Sheriff's Department Special Response Unit will have a display, and West Pierce Fire and Rescue Station number 31, just on the other side of the street here, will host an open house from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. with free hot dogs, refreshments, and also an opportunity to look over their equipment. So again, if groups are interested in participating in the parade, they must pre-register. The deadline for registration is May 25th. All the application materials are on our city website. With that, Mayor, I conclude my report.
All right, Mr. Sugg, thank you. Appreciate those updates, and we'll look forward to some more conversation on those and a fun time with Duck Days. Always a great time. With that, we're going to see if we have any other council members that would like to make comment. Councilmember Keel.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Steve. I was waiting for those hot dogs. I was like, he's not saying hot dogs. Okay, it's great. I just want to take a few moments to talk about something that I had sent out through social media, and now I just want to say it from the dais as well. I intend not to run for my seat this time around. It's been 12 years, 3 elections. It's been really great run. I think that, well, I know that all the things that motivated me to get in this chair, I have completed. The big thing was the town center, and as a school board member and all that, that was a great motivator for me to want to be here and do what I could do to help bring that to fruition. And as we can all see, that's done. Recreation was another big thing for me. Although we don't have a program, there's a lot of things that we've done to help mitigate that. We've got a group here that's working on building playgrounds. We've got a group doing a senior center right now that we've partnered with. We've got agreements with other cities where our citizens can go and participate in recreation. And now there's a plan that talks about building something on that pad that we have there at the Cirque Park. So that was another focus for me as well. There was a focus for me around reducing our debt. We have refinanced bonds twice, I think now, which reduced our debt service. We have paid down some of those bonds. The fact that we've got the town center built and businesses in here in our city, I think, has actually help reduce our debt as well. So, and the last piece was public safety. It was a thing that was really big on my list, and I know all of my colleagues' lists as well. And with the passage this year, I feel very good about the work that I was able to work with my colleagues here these past 12 years to get things done. And so, you know, all good things come to an end. And for me, I've reached the end of that. It's going to be bittersweet, but I am prepared to move on. And speaking of moving on, I do intend to be a very active citizen. Don't be surprised to see me sitting in the audience or coming to public comment. I hope the council will help me do one of the things that's going to be a very passionate, very strong passion for me going forward as a private citizen, and that is the Four Corners. It's something that I talked about on 19th and Mildred. I've talked about that as a council member. I've been it for years. We need to develop that. As you all know, Sound Transit is coming in there in 2034 or 5 with light rail. I think we need to plan now and work now with Sound Transit to get in there what we want. What I don't want to see happen is that we develop that and then they come in with eminent domain and just rip up everything. And I think that we need to plan now with them. The city, I think, can utilize me as a private citizen. I think the CEO will remember who I am. My signature is on her employment contract, and so she won't forget me. And so I think that I'll be in a very good place to help with conversations along those lines. So that's what I hope that we can do going forward. Now, I'm not done. I still have several more months on this term, and I'm going to be active. Okay, and I'm going to study everything and continue to make sure that the citizens of this city gets what they have entrusted me to do to the very end. So thank you for that, and that concludes my comments.
Well, Councilmember Keel, thank you for your many years of service here. You are not done. We still have more than 6 months, so all right, 6 months of working together. I look forward to that, as I have really enjoyed working with you and being able to, together with our council, make some significant changes, and you've helped with that leadership. We'll have more opportunity for this, but I very much appreciate your comments there. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. First, Councilmember Keel, thank you for your service and also your leadership, mentorship, and friendship. And look forward to working with you for the remaining 6 months and on to the future.
Thank you.
Couple things I wanted to discuss just really quick. I got an email from our legislature, Representative Levitt, just stating that she feels confident that there's going to be a solution to the Blake decision that AWC is supporting in its current form. I'm cautiously optimistic that something will happen. So hopefully that will preempt what we have to do as a city if that doesn't go through. And then finally, Ms. Jones, thank you for your comments here today. One of my other hats I wear is I'm president of the Friends of the Fort Lewis Military Museum. And if you're going to be around here after the meeting, I'd love to talk with you. If not, I'd still like to reach out and talk with you at some point here soon. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Very good. Thanks, Councilmember Wood. Councilmember McCluskey, do you have any comments for us this evening?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. I would like to thank Councilmember Keel for his tenure on our city council. I know it's not over yet, but your regional and now your national and your state influence certainly was felt in our city and value added because of your service and your commitment to have our city noted outside of its city boundaries. Thank you for being a pioneer and inspiration, leading other council members along that path. I know during that time you had an extremely hectic schedule, trying to balance all those different hats. So certainly appreciated you as a fellow council member as well. And whatever you do, I wish you well, and look forward for the next 6 months to see what magic you can pull out of your rabbit hat between now and then. Okay, that's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be equally brief. We did have a SHAPE meeting. It was a continuation of what I had reported last time, and there's more to come on that. But I, too, want to just echo the comments of other council members and to thank Council Member Keel for your service to the community. You certainly have left an indelible mark, both as a school board member, as a city council member, as a mayor. I remember some conversations we had when you were mayor, and just the leadership you provided to our city and just making it a better place. So appreciate all that you've done, and I too, like the rest, look forward to what you got coming up next in your life, because I know you're not going to go just sit and retire and do nothing. So, but thank you.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Polisi.
Well, I'll echo the rest of my council members and say, you know, it's been 12 years and a lot has been accomplished in those 12 years, and we still got 7 more months to go. So I'll wait and give some more definitive comments at your last council meeting in December.
Very good. And Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. And Councilmember Kent, my last remarks will be in December because it's a long, you know, I'm going to need an hour, by the way. Okay. Long list of accomplishments and friendship. With that, I'd like to just keep do a summary of the April 17th through April the 20th DC trip that I took on behalf of the city. And just quickly, I met with the following congressional and federal department representatives, and that was Congressman Derek Kilmer, and we did accomplish getting letters of support from him, as well as from Rick Larson, Congressman Rick Larson, Congressman Marilyn Strickland, as well as I went and met with Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Ms. Arnita Hannon. She's an intergovernmental liaison, which we talk about continued support here in the Puget Sound and keeping us abreast of grants that are coming out that we may be able to take advantage of. After that, also met with PSRC's, Puget Sound Regional Council's lobbying firm, representative, Leslie Podner. She's the senior policy advisor with Holland and Knight. And since I was going up there on behalf of UP, I asked Josh Brown to be able to meet with us, with our PSRC's lobbyists, which she actually was very helpful with our lobbyists and myself for our meetings, because she gave me some tips on how to address Kilmer and some other folks about how to, for example, the roundabout funding that we're looking at. I also met with, and the purpose of the meetings was to shore up support for the Day Island Bridge project, currently a BRIC application with FEMA, as you know, about $17 million, and the access to Chambers Bay Roundabout project, about a $1.8 million project with Congressman Strickland, as she added that project as one of her top 15 projects forwarded for direct congressional funding consideration, which Kilmer is on that committee. Then, of course, I was on the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program, which is currently going on through PSRC. It's quite a bit of monies that have already gone out. Second funding round went out recently, and a third round will go as well, and which will really benefit the Puget Sound. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And then the last part would be opportunities to meet with, I did have an opportunity to meet with Ed Thomas. Now, Ed Thomas was with a executive VP partner with Deloitte. If you don't know who that is, it's a major CPA firm out of Seattle, but he became the chief operating officer for the World Cup that's coming to the Puget Sound, Seattle, and which is huge, and a lot of different players, a lot of different partners, and so with that, I'm hoping to continue my conversations with him as what opportunities can come to UP, and what they see. They see every community having some part to play, because we're talking about the whole world coming here at a point that Seattle can't take it all. So I'll be following that. Oh, by the way, that World Cup will be in 2026. So they basically have 2.5 years to get ready. Okay? And that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Well, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, thank you. Appreciate your feedback, or rather your report on the DC trip, and some good progress there as always. So excellent. I have a few comments I wanted to add as in terms of my opportunity here tonight. A couple of them would be just to start with. At the last meeting, we passed out about was it 115 proclamations? About 115 proclamations. It was a fun, maybe a new record. In any case, it was a fun evening as we recognized our Curtis Viking sports teams and their championship year that they've had. Following that, a few days later, I had an invitation to attend the Curtis soccer team's playoff for state. And so, of course, I attended and watched the Curtis Vikes beat the Rainier Rams on a 4-2 win, and they progressed on up the ladder into the state playoffs. So that was a lot of fun. I was glad to have the invitation. Just wanted to share that with everybody. We are, in a sense, a small community in a number of ways. In other ways, we're a little larger community, but our hometown soccer teams, sports teams are important to our sense of community and our neighbors and ourselves and our sons and daughters that played on those teams here. So I was glad to participate with all of that. Councilmember Wood had mentioned the Blake decision, and as I think all of us on the dais know, the state legislature convened today in a special session with that sole purpose of addressing the Blake decision, and we certainly hope they do. In my mind, a statewide solution is the best solution. Though if that doesn't come about, we might still need to do something locally. I was part of a call, as I mentioned I would be, a video conference with county executive, with elected prosecutor Robinette, and with our sheriff, along with another dozen or so mayors here. And we discussed how to progress in this. There are a number of resources available to us in terms of therapeutic courts. We've been assured that there's capacity in that system to help people as they move through recovery, if court-directed recovery or some other approach. We talked about some other potentials. But I can see that it is going to be a challenge to weave all the different interests at the local government level into one similar unifying bit of ordinance for some 20-some jurisdictions. That's going to be difficult. But it is better than not having enforcement for public display of drug use or for other drug-related offenses that are now enforceable to some degree, but will no longer be enforceable as July 1st. That's why Blake, as we know, Blake getting fixed is important this week. And we hope that Representative Levitt is entirely correct with the outcome there. And I'm also reasonably optimistic about it, but I want to get Plan B in our hip pocket if we need it. And so there is some work underway on Plan B, but Plan A would be better. So I just wanted to report out to you and also to our community about what's going on and what we're doing about fixing this problem that will potentially impact how we can do law enforcement around public drug use. Then, additionally, I wanted to add a little bit more on the federal agenda, and we've been making good progress there. And as we've reported, it's on Congresswoman Strickland's legislative agenda. One of her 15 projects, as the Mayor Pro Tem had mentioned, and such. Now it's a matter of getting that funded. We also, earlier tonight, had talked about the Day Island Bridge, and we all recognize how vulnerable that is. Recently, we received now a letter from the Department of Defense, along with support from JBLM, and it's a key letter for us that shows support and shows a compelling case why that bridge, why it would, if it were to come down, how it could disrupt the military logistics system supporting between our port and this major base. So we have that, and that's, I think, a key piece. But we also, just in the last, this week, have received support letters from the Port of Tacoma. And today, or perhaps it was today, a support letter we also received from the Seaport Alliance, also related to the Port of Tacoma. It's the alliance that works with both the Port of Tacoma seabound freight and the Port of Seattle seabound freight, coordinating that. And they, too, have recognized the need to keep that bridge from being a liability that disrupts shipments on the West Coast. So those things are moving forward. Not done yet, but I think we're getting some attention on it, and all of that's pointed towards our FEMA BRIC grant process as we move forward there. But I wanted to let each of you know about that process as well. Other things we have going on would be some things with the Association of Washington Cities. I think many of us are attending or planning on attending the AWC conference coming up in Spokane in the third week of June. We have, as is the habit, an opportunity to identify 3 delegates, voting delegates for the business portion of that meeting. If someone is interested in that, in being a voting delegate, please let me know or Emmy know, and we'll develop a process appropriately. And from what I can tell, I have an interest. Councilmember Keel apparently has an interest. Not that that's at all surprising. And is there anybody else that has an interest in being a voting delegate? Yes, Caroline, thank you. Or excuse me, Councilmember Lucy, thank you. Is anyone else offhand that we will develop a process if we need to, but that would be our 3 delegates otherwise. So, I'm not seeing that. If that changes, let me know. We'll prepare a resolution to that effect for our next council meeting so we can get that resolved and get it on the consent agenda, unless we have a 4th person, and then we'll develop a different process. Speaking of the AWC conference, and we do have a good representation going, it can be a bit challenging running a remote meeting, and the start of the AWC conference that Tuesday is actually our regular council meeting because of Juneteenth. So there's been some discussion that we move our meeting set for June, 20th?
Yeah.
To the previous week, a little earlier, and I think we had an informal poll that suggested June 14th could be a common date that we could use. Does any, while this is slightly out of order, it seems nonetheless appropriate, does anyone have any concerns over the June 14th date on council? If we were to move set that up as a special meeting, I see Councilmember McCluskey does. All right.
So 14th is a Wednesday.
Yes. Okay. And so we have one conflict with council there, and
yeah, I have a conflict on Wednesday, so I won't be able to attend the meeting that's held on Wednesday.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. We'll continue to see if there's alternatives. From what I gather from our early polling, I'm not sure what alternatives there are at this particular point, unless we were to have it on a regular meeting date, but that has its own set of challenges. that would be particularly challenging depending upon if we're down to the wire on the Blake decision. So that's our last opportunity to take effective action before we create a gap in our regulatory climate. All right. So more to come on that, but we may have something, we most likely have that resolved, and if necessary, set a special meeting date at our next regular meeting, June 5th, something like that. Let's see, 20th, 14th, June 6th. So, yeah, okay. Had to do a little calendar math, but I think I got it. That's coming up. We'll keep you posted. Just a reminder, we have we have our retreat coming up on June 10th in this room, and so we have that underway, and I think we've talked a bit about that agenda recently, so you're familiar with what's happening with it. And the only other thing I have to say is go Krakens. Tonight is the final playoff game for this round, so I want to see the Krakens go on to the next phase. So,
Yes, I want that too.
They've been playing.
all right. Well, unless there's something else.
There's 10 seconds left in the game.
I think we're adjourned.
Okay, what's the score?
Stars 2.